Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Show with your host, Jeff Lopes.
We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I am your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Joe Delagrave. What is up, brother?
What's going on, man? Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I've got to know Joe over the last little while, and incredible story, incredible dude, man. This is going to be a fun conversation today. We were actually just having a pretty in-depth conversation before we went live that we probably could have recorded already. So I'm excited to talk about his journey, talk about his announcement. He's got a big announcement that I'm sure he's already told people, but I'm excited for his future. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. So how I always start for podcasts, just allow the audience to know what you're currently doing, what you're currently up to, your announcement. And then we're going to dive more into your story and about you, and just let the conversation flow, and wherever it goes, it goes. So let the audience know who you are and what you're currently up to right now.
Yes. So my name is Joe Delagrave. I live in the Caribbean island of Wisconsin. That you can't have and then I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a Paralympic wheelchair rugby player. Wheelchair rugby, kind of a weird deal, but it's basically like a bunch of crippled people jumping in big gladiator tank chairs and then smashing into each other, trying to make each other more crippled. So it's a weird deal. It's a really fun sport. There's a lot of strategy involved too, and it's a cerebral game, and the smashing and stuff like that. But and yes, that's what I'm up to. I just found out it is a really neat thing for me and my family that I'm selected to the United States Wheelchair Rugby Paralympic team, heading to Tokyo here in 3 months. We're 90 days away from our first game. Got a countdown going. Really excited about that, and blessed to captain the team as well. So leadership is something that's really important to me. So that's what we're doing the next 90 days.
That's a big achievement. I mean, this is your second round as captain, right?
So this is my first time captaining the Paralympic team, but I've captained the team for 8 years on the national team. So, Paralympics every 4 years, but
yeah.
So I've captained a long time, but this is my first time going to the Paralympics as one of the leaders of the team.
Congrats on that. That's pretty amazing achievement. Let's dive into, before we get into your actual story of what got you on your journey there. Let's dive into Joe as a kid. Where'd you grow up? How many siblings? How was your childhood? Let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I grew up on the Mississippi River in a little river town called Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. We bounced around in my childhood, like 5 different schools in Southwest Wisconsin, but grew up from 7th grade all the way through high school in Prairie du Chien, and love that little small town, about 5,000 people, and a little river town and kind of historic downtown, the whole thing. It's like the second oldest city in Wisconsin other than Green Bay, because of the river access way back in the 1800s. So it's a beautiful area. It's in the Driftless region. And but growing up, I loved sports. I loved being a part of a team. I loved being a part of, whether it's basketball, football, baseball. I was part of plays and musicals as well. The Music Man, Bye Bye Birdie, Pirates of Penzance. Like, I was pirate number 7 in Pirates, which is a big deal. Come on now. I wasn't pirate number 8. That guy was a loser, but pirate number 7. Come on. Like, that was, but no, I love being a part of something bigger than myself. Where I fit into the puzzle. And the other thing that I gravitated towards, and why I gravitated towards sports, was that affirmation piece. I think a lot of us seek out affirmation, whether it's from our dads or moms, or whether it's from our coaches or our bosses, or like everything in the world, I feel like is tied to that affirmation piece. We tie our identity to that. And that's something that I sought out a lot of in healthy ways. And that I learned later in life, kind of in some unhealthy ways as well.
Why would you say you seek that out? And I know there's a story with your pops, but why would you seek that out, affirmation?
I think it's built in to someone telling you you're good enough, someone telling you you're worthy enough, or other times saying, hey man, you got to suck it up. That constructive criticism piece that I love as well, because I think coaching is very, very valuable, where you're not meeting the mark, or, hey, you did a good job here. And so sometimes it's great in a healthy way that you have those human guardrails up, so to speak, where you're not falling off the edge. But in other ways, I think a lot of us are too scared sometimes to just say, I am this, like I am worthy, or I am valuable. And we have a hard time looking in the mirror and telling ourselves that. So we seek out people to do it ourselves. I think I was part of that as well.
Could I ask you a question? And this is something I, as a dad coach, I really have a passion for is teaching parents to really take that concept and really dive in and teach their kids how to believe in themselves from a very young age. And it's one thing I think a lot of people don't do with their kids is that self-belief, that breaking the fears from a very young age. So when they do get to a certain level where they're starting to take their steps onto adulthood and getting onto their own lives, they've never really were able to have those tools to break from the fears or break those tools to believe in themselves. Do you believe that's something that you might have not had as a kid, and maybe that's something you're incorporating with your kids a lot more now?
Well, yeah, 100%. I think, man, it's such a beautiful thing to be able to be a dad and pour into my kids' life. They're 9, 7, and 5, but already just like, and it's this, some of it's mirrored by what I'm doing, but I also want to like show them like you're valuable, you're worthy. Yes, my two favorite words that I tell them, whether they love sports as well or whatever they're doing, whether it's music, like you two things that you can control, and you don't have to be talented at anything, is communication and effort. You're going to communicate well, and you're going to give max effort. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you're into, but those two things you're going to do. If you're going to sign up for sports, you're going to sign up for music, you're going to sign up for like whatever you want to do, those two things you can control and you're going to be good at.
I'm going to ask you a question there, because it's something I'm truly passionate about. And it's something that drives me crazy is I'm very competitive, and I want my kids to be competitive. I want them to want to win. I want that mindset from a very young age. They don't want to be second. They want to be first. And a lot of people are like, that's not a good. And I'm like, no, that is a good thing. You're teaching them how to be winners. And I think with society nowadays and with the school system, everybody gets a participation ribbon. And I can't stand that shit. So just by you talking, you could tell you're in the same boat. What's your mindset with that? Because I think if society gives everybody that equality in the way where it's like, it's okay to be average. When reality is, when you get into the real world, average doesn't cut it. So what's your mindset on that?
Yeah, man. Like this is, man, you hit the, we're having a real talk here. You get me fired up on, no, like in our society right now, everyone's like, we all win, it's like third grade fight and hey, we ended in a tie. Like, no, we didn't. There's a winner and there's a loser, and that's real life.
Yeah. 100%.
Like you either if you're going for X job, you either get it or someone else gets it. You win at it or you're losing at it. And with that, like, stop being afraid of failure, because failure is where we learn.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times I'll say, to our guys on the national team, we either win or we lose. Because when you win by 1, you're going, man, we kicked their butt. We dominated, right? When you lose by 1, now everything, like, let's throw our entire game plan out the window. So like there's winning and there's learning. Because a lot of times I think when we win, we don't sit and wait and really look at the lesson. And so, because like in my story, I know in a lot of people's stories.
Hey, repeat that. Repeat what you just said there. When you win, a lot of people say that again. I think that's a great thing to listen to.
Yeah. Like when you win, a lot of people don't stop and find the lesson. When you lose, when you fail, everyone's like, "Ooh, we better check ourselves here." And I think most of us grow from the valleys, like from the failures. That's where the growth comes from.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in my story, and I've seen it in a lot of different people, where in those valleys, that's your choice to respond. And that's where character's built as well. And so like, if we can teach our kids, hey, today practice, man, you sucked. Like that was terrible. And that's okay. Like, that's not me saying like my kids are bad, or my kids, whatever, and like abuse it. Like, no, like that, you're teaching your kid you get to respond and you get to choose after you've had a bad day, because we all have them, and that's real life. And for some reason, we've got all these lawnmower parents that are mowing over the obstacles for their kids all the way up until college. And now they're handing them the keys to life, and they don't know anything. They have no skills on failure and on responding to it. It's crazy.
Yeah. And just in general, responsibilities. Like my kids are 13 and 15. They cook, they clean, they do laundry. They know basic life skills. I teach them public speaking skills. I make sure they are always constantly educating themselves, learning. I constantly make sure their fitness levels at a certain level. Like you're constantly building them up, and allowing them to build themselves up as well, right? And one thing you said there too is when it comes to preparing kids, I think a lot of parents, like I said, they try to have that mindset of like, I had a hard life, I don't want my kids to have a hard life. And there's nothing wrong with allowing your kids to learn and work and build on their own, because all those lessons are just going to magnify and allow them to have a great future and a great career, whatever they decide to get into. Let's dive into your journey and let's start off your story. Like how did we end up where we are right now with the accident and stuff like that? Let's dive into that a bit and allow our audience to know a little bit more about your story.
So went to college to play football at Division II school in Winona State in Minnesota. And that was kind of like the whole dream, the whole goal and desire. I wanted to play a college sport and worked hard at it.
What position did you play?
Played tight end. Yeah. So in college, about 6'6", 260 pounds. Big solid dude.
So you're how tall?
Yeah, I'm 6'6". I sit down no one knows, but
you're that tall.
Yeah. Everyone's like, how are your kids so tall? Because my oldest and my youngest are very tall for their age. And our middle child, Braden's kind of the runt of the family, but he might be the best athlete because he has to work a little bit harder. But anyway, but no, yeah, I'm 6'6". But I joke that, I'm like 4'2", and I'm at fart level for everything. Like I just smell everyone's swamp. Terrible. But anyway, I'm
gonna use that little clip as the promo for the podcast.
Yeah, perfect. But no, like there's, in college, living out the dream. I played as a true freshman, so I had a really good fall camp, and just at 19, you feel so invincible. It's such a romantic time in your life because there's so many, like everyone's like, oh, it's a fork in life. Like it's a fork, but there's like 15 different segments or 100 different segments of where life can go based on your choices you make. And it's so romantic to like think about who you're going to be with and what, like if you're gonna have kids or what job you want or whatever. Like there's so much opportunity at that point that you feel so invincible. And after my freshman year of football, I went back home to my hometown of Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. And I'm working for the city. My job was with the Parks and Rec department. Basically, I just drove a truck around, checked the river levels, dumped some chlorine in the pool, and then made fun of my best friend Kyle, who had the weed whacking job for the city. Like he drew the short straw on that one because he actually had to work for 8 straight hours compared to me just going through Hardee's 3 times a day. So when we're back in the hometown of Prairie du Chien, like on the river town, like I said, growing up, a lot of us go on the river every weekend. And Kyle had a hand-me-down boat from his grandpa that was like 35 horsepower, little boat, little bass fishing thing. And we always jumped on the river and had been out there hundreds and hundreds of times, fishing, kneeboarding, whatever it is. And July 10th, 2004 rolls around. We're out on the river. It's a Saturday, after a hard week work for Kyle and me make fun of him. We're on the river and he's driving. Our other buddy, Adam, who grew up on the same street on Ohio Street in Prairie, was out kneeboarding, and we're in a back slough of the Mississippi. And if you've ever been on the Mississippi before, there's like the main channels and there's the back sloughs where it's a little bit calmer and a lot of good fishing and kneeboarding is easier when you have a small boat that doesn't do well. And so we're back there. And you never know how deep or shallow the water is. And Kyle, in a split second, accidentally hits the bottom of the river. I'm sitting on the boat enjoying the day, 75 degrees, arms behind my head. And I fly backwards. The chair breaks, fly backwards, hit my head on the front of the boat, inside the boat, and snap my neck at the C6 and 7 level. So in a split second, I went from a 19-year-old invincible kid that's 6'6", 260 pounds, enjoying his goal of being a college football player to paralysis and breaking my neck. And all of a sudden, I wake up and Kyle and Adam are over top of me with a look of concern. There's tears streaming down their face. I wake up, my head had cracked all the way down to the skull. And I'm going like I'm excruciating pain. And they're asking me, Joe, can you move your legs? And I'm freaking out going like, you don't even think about it subconsciously when you move your body. Your brain's sending a signal down through your spinal cord into your legs, and nothing happens. And I'm kind of going like, guys, what's the matter? What's the matter? And they're like, can you feel your legs? And I went and tried to feel my legs, and it felt like I was touching someone else's legs. It was the most out of body experience, and knew from there right on the boat that something bad had happened, but I didn't know the extent. I didn't know the permanency. I didn't know that there was paralysis. I didn't know that my football career was done. At that point, I just knew that my head hurt really bad and something bad had happened. And so they ended up taking me from rescue boat to ambulance to the hospital to the helicopter to get me to the local hospital that was bigger, where I could have surgery on my neck. And that's kind of how I ended up in this wheelchair, and how kind of the journey of a new life that I had never saw coming started.
What was those initial days after everything? Like, where was your mind? Where was the realization of it? Like, was there an instant diagnosis saying, hey, this is what has happened and this is where you're going to be? Was there still hope of walking? Was there what was the initial reaction when it first happened?
Yeah. So like the first couple of days are really foggy. I think it was, a couple of days after, maybe a week into it or whatever. I remember the doctors coming in and telling me what had happened. They put the x-rays up and the MRIs and kind of showed me, hey, Joe, this is what happened. This is what we did surgery on, about a 5-6 hour surgery to fuse my C6 and 7, which is 6 and 7 vertebrae down from the base of your skull. And they said, you have a spinal cord injury. I had no idea what that was. And you're paralyzed. I obviously knew what paralyzed was from about the chest down. And they said, you got about 3% chance to walk again. That's it. And they're like, Joe, your football career is probably going to be done. And they're very black and white about it as doctors. They're very black and white about it. So you're not holding on to some false hope or something like that. But for me, I was like, there's no way. You tell a 19-year-old kid there that his football career is over. He's not going to walk anymore. And I'm just like, get the hell out of my room. I don't want to there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of bitterness. There's a lot of resentment, and all these questions swirling around in my head that already at 19 start amplifying, in the hospital. It wasn't just all at once, but throughout the hospital stay, I'm going is this girl that I'm going to stay with me? Can I find another passion that I had with sports? Can I find a purpose in my life? What kind of job can I do in a wheelchair? Is this there's one point, and I never really had any big suicidal ideation or anything, but there was a thought going is this life in a wheelchair worth living at one point? And you think about those things. I remember my mom, she was in the room, and she's a beautiful blonde and tall as well. Her maiden name's Tallman. So that's where we get our height from. And I remember her in there, and she's always I really want grandkids, blah, blah, blah. And so she's talking to doctors. She's like, hey, doc, do you think my son's going to be able to have sex? And I'm like, Mom, get the hell, I'm 19, first of all, right? I don't want to talk about sex with my mom at all. Able-bodied in a hospital bed, whatever. And so I'm just like, would you get out of my room, please? And then I called the doc. I'm like, Doc, hey, what's the deal with this? Is this thing going to work or what? Because that's the things you're thinking about at 19, right? And all right, if I'm in a wheelchair, my stuff better work, right? And so, and he's like, yeah, well, whatever. But anyway, that was kind of the thing. And I'll say this too, Jeff. I'm a man of faith. My faith is very, very important to me. And I'd received this Bible verse a week before my accident from a shirt that I wore. It was a Don Beebe House of Speed shirt. I don't know if you remember Don Beebe, but he played for the Buffalo Bills when they lost the Super Bowls. And so he had this and I got it from our kicker on our football team my freshman year, because they thought it'd be funny because I was tall and I was big, but I wasn't very fast. And so even the wide receiver coach was always mad at his receivers. He's like, Joe can get open, and he's the slowest guy on our team, but you guys don't have any good foot. And I'm like, that's a really bad backhanded compliment, but thanks. And so our kicker gives us this shirt. I'm like, I'm keeping this bad boy. And it said Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 on it. I wore it a week before my accident. I didn't realize that it had that verse on it until a week before. Some coach was like, hey man, what's on your shirt? And it just says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on understanding, in all your ways, acknowledge him, and he'll direct your paths. And I remember that after my accident, and my sisters put it on my wall in the hospital room. And I remember waking up and seeing it and being so pissed off about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, like, I don't want to trust in God. I don't want to trust in my faith. I want to know what's going on. And I think a lot of times, people are like, well, God never gives you more than you can handle. Well, that's BS. Like, sometimes life is hard, and we do get more than we can handle. And it's frustrating. And there's all these emotions that your resentment and anger and bitterness, and like those things are real. And I want to talk about those things that are real, because people aren't going to identify with someone that's just butterfly and rainbows. That's not life. It just isn't.
No.
And can I
say something? I'm going to jump in there quickly.
Yeah.
I don't think we talked. I'm not sure we did, but my son spent 4 months. Did we talk about this with each other?
Yeah.
So my son spent 4 months at Sick Kids Hospital. And when I was there for those 4 months, we had a lot of, on my mom's family, everybody's very, very, very religious side of her family. And they would all come there and they would always give these religious speeches. And that was the last thing I wanted to hear at that moment, because I was looking around, and this room had 6 beds. It was the 4th floor of the ICU of Sick Kids Hospital. Out of those 6 beds, every week, 3 or 4 babies would pass, and it would be a rotating door in that place. And then I would go to a different ward, and you see children 4 or 5 years old with cancer, and you see all this, and you're like, if there's a God, like, there's pedophiles, there's pieces of shit out in this world that are hurting people, and they all have healthy lives. Like, why is this happening to these children? And I really, be honest, I question it a lot. And I questioned beliefs, and I questioned just in general, like, why these things are happening. Did you go through that stage?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe some people are better off. I think most people do, when they go through something that just smacks you and devastates you. It's devastating. You're 19 and you just told you're not going to walk again. And your athletic identity, what was like your full identity was rooted in getting to play football and being an athlete and the affirmation piece. And now it's gone.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I was just going like, what? Everyone's like, here, read a book on why good stuff happens or bad stuff happens to good people, or read like, and I'm like, no, like, just tell me what's going on and why this is happening and what, like, let me and a lot of times we don't get those answers.
We never do. You never do.
Yeah.
You seem to go through a situation. I'm going through myself again. You go through a situation where you become numb to it and you accept it and you move on from it and you try to learn from it. But I don't think you ever fully come to an understanding of it.
Yeah.
Quick. So when was that moment when you could truly grasp the situation you're in and you were ready to start moving forward? How long of a period was that? Because that's, I think, is important for people to understand, because like where you are now and obviously where you were, it's day and night. Like, you're taking on the world and your future is so bright now. But what was that period, that gap, where things started to see a brighter light, or come to a better understanding? I don't think a brighter light is even the word. Come to a better understanding of your situation and how to accept it.
Yeah. Initially, I say this because I think there's different periods depending on what we're talking about. But initially, it was 2-year period where it was a struggle.
Yeah.
Like I like now, and I wish I would have taken a lot more pictures and videos back then, just to kind of see the contrast. But I did not want my picture taken in a wheelchair. I did not want people to realize I was disabled. I did not want to be like in a mall or in a restaurant, or just see it, because you go from looking over a room, being physically tall like I was, to sitting down, and now someone has to open a door for me, and now someone else to help. Like, initially I had to help people get me to stick a catheter just to pee. And when I went back 90 days in the hospital, 3 months, and I'm back home with my parents, and my mom is taking care of me. So like my masculinity along with that identity was ripped away, and then just the independence that you feel at 19 gone. I'm like 100% dependent on someone, and it just wrecks you mentally, and it takes a while. But I will say this: one of the biggest things that helped me you know, and a lot of people are like, oh, you're self-made, you're this and that, but there's people around you at different periods in your life that
Always,
lift you up
always.
when you need it and then pull you back when you need it. Like those human guardrails that I talk about. And that for me was amazing. I went to rehab at a place that no one should really go to rehab because that was the only spinal cord injury. So I had no one around me that looked like me, which was hard for rehab. But the proximity of where I was really good because I had people from my hometown to be able to stop in every single day, coaches, teammates, friends, family. My girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, was there every single day. And then people from my college, my teammates, my coaches. I have a coach that still calls me. We still talk once a month. You know,
I love it. I love that.
20 years later.
Quick question. So your girlfriend during the whole situation is your wife now? She was with you this whole time?
Yeah. So my wife, April, has been with me through the whole deal. I broke up with her a little bit after, because, you know, I make really good decisions sometimes. Just kidding. But I broke up with her, I think probably because she was showing me so much love at that young age there. I'm like, I don't know if I love this girl as much. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But it's just, man, people are placed in your life. And it's just, she's one of those, because she's so good at lifting me up, but she's so good at saying, you know what, Joe, like
grounding you.
Dude, yeah. She's like, hey man, I'm going to take a wheel off your chair and leave you there if you don't. Like, she just doesn't care about my disability. She cares about me as a person and sees me as a person. And she did that from a very early time on, which was really, really helpful.
I love that. I got to smile ear to ear because that's very precious, buddy.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, man. Do not overlook that and appreciate that, because it's very hard to have somebody in your life through the good and bad.
Yeah.
So appreciate that. That's a very, very special woman you have there. So make sure she realizes how special she is on a regular basis. So it was roughly the 2-year period. Was rugby your first sport? Do you really started playing after this injury, or was there other progressions into it?
Yeah, no, like that was the first and only kind of deal. You know, I've done a bunch of different stuff, but the reason I got into it too was, again, another person. Kyle was the one driving the boat. And he was, and we're best friends to this day, but he had, you know, hung out with me or whatever when he wasn't in college and that first year. And he's like, dude, like, in the most loving way possible, he's like, you're getting really fat and you need to do something about it. Like, in a very loving way. And he's like, well, why don't we just go weigh you? Like, he coaxed me into getting weighed at the local hospital, which didn't have a wheelchair scale. It just had like a bed with a zeroed out scale. And finally I'm like, fine, dude. Like, I don't think I'm like that big, but whatever. And I had ate my feelings.
What did you get up to?
Yeah, I left the hospital like 220 after losing a bunch of weight because of not eating and muscle loss and stuff. And then on that bed that day said 285 pounds. And I'm like,
with or without the wheelchair?
So without the wheelchair, 285 pounds.
That's a big gap.
Yeah. Yep. And so I was up to 285 pounds, you know, pushing 300 bills. And I'm like, your bed's broken. Like, there's something wrong with your bed. So I made him like zeroed out again. And of course it said the same weight. And I'm like, I get your point, Kyle. And that kind of like started triggering the need to play something. The other thing that triggered it as well was going back to college, going back to Winona, helping out with the football team. And I remember them just flying onto the field all jacked up. And that was the first time that I felt again, like, oh, like I've still got this competitive spirit inside of me. Like, I wanted to push my wheelchair out there with them the whole thing, you know, like it was just, and I realized like, I don't want to coach right now. I'm 19, 20 years old. Like, I want to go and play. And so I looked up wheelchair sports online and looked up wheelchair basketball, which basketball was one of my favorite sports growing up. And but then I did some research and I realized that a lot of people that had way more function, so I couldn't really compete competitively at it. So I'm like, okay, not going to happen. Looked up wheelchair racing. That's a big one with the racing wheelchairs. And that's like the dumbest joke everyone tells me in the airport when I'm next to another person in a wheelchair. They're like, hey, you gonna race, man? And I'm like, that is like, get new material. Like, that's the dumbest thing, because it's like you don't go up to two able-bodied people walking. You can't, like, you're holding your hand with your wife and be like, hey, you guys gonna race? Like, that's not a thing, right? But for some reason in wheelchairs.
I never heard it before, so that's why I'm laughing. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Oh, hold on.
Yeah,
lost my headphones. You just have to deal with the crippled part of the the crippled part of the show. Okay. And
turn the other one in.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. So and then I found a link to something called Murderball. Wheelchair rugby used to be called Murderball back in the day. And it was just clickbait.
I never knew that. Okay.
Yeah, it was just clickbait. So I clicked on it and I'm like, this thing is amazing. I see a bunch of crippled people smashing into each other. And I'm like, what?
And they call it Murderball?
And they called it Murderball back in the day. So like it was complete clickbait. But I saw something I had never seen before. People with disabilities smashing into each other. It was a complete oxymoron of what you thought a disability was and what I thought disability was. And so I immediately was like, I need to find the closest team. I found a team in Minneapolis, Minnesota, went up to a practice and they had me get in a chair. And
I would say they're totally different chairs. I'm assuming for just
completely different chairs. They're once you buy a chair, they're made completely to your body, specific to your measurements, and so you're kind of one with the chair. But for me, I just jumped in a loaner. They strapped me into it, a bunch of different, like my feet, my knees, my waist, my chest. So like basically we're strapped into the chair. So when you fall over, you're not in a terrible yard sale and you're just yard sale body parts on the floor type of thing. But,
you have the most crazy one-liners, and it's like part of me's like, should I smile? Should I not?
Yeah. You can smile. Yeah. You can smile. Yeah. But no, and part of the reason I do that is because like,
it's all humor changes everything, and I agree with that.
It brings the human nature to
100%, and that makes it and that makes it also special because it allows you the captivated audience and put them in a relaxed state. And as a public speaker, being able to throw that one-liner here and there just to change the atmosphere is so special. So special. Like that's something when I talk to and I teach. I actually help with public speaking, a couple of guys I'm working with. And that's one thing I'm like, you gotta get some one-liners, some punchlines, just to change the atmosphere of the crowd every once in a while, just to give that pause, that change, just to if they're not paying attention, all of a sudden to listen again. Right. So I love how you do that because it's always at the right spot too, which is really is a talent, be honest, a talent of public speaking. So continue from there. So you went up, you in Minneapolis, you tried on this, you got in strapped down and instantly fell in love.
Instantly. So this is probably the most special moment of my wheelchair rugby career. I've won a lot of different medals and accomplished a lot in the sport, but for that moment,
what year was that? First off,
this is 2006.
So this is
a couple years after.
So you're looking at 15 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a gap. I thought it was a lot less. That's 50. That's a big gap.
Yeah.
So you're an OG on this, man.
I'm an OG. I'm an OG for sure. Yeah, getting a little long in the tooth. Thankfully, there's some older guys in the team still that are pushing 40. So I feel young.
Yeah.
But no. So I'm getting in and I'm strapped all up and I am crippled as can be. So like I had a sliding board with baby powder so I could slide my cheeks, like the whole thing. We showed up just with, we looked like a circus, man. Like we had everything. They're just like, what are you doing? And I get on the court. It's a small little court. It's like a little Cracker Jack box of a court in a rehab hospital.
Yeah.
And we're pushing up and down the court and balls are flying everywhere. I'm terrible at it. I have no idea how to play the game, but my lungs start filling up with air. I get a little hotter. Might need to pee a little bit, 30 minutes in. And I had this aha moment. Like I get to be an athlete again.
Yeah.
I get to play a sport again.
Yeah.
And the other piece of it that was so special that night was I'm around a group of people that showed up and were driving independently here. That group of people, none of those guys were good at rugby. And even if they listen to this, they know like they're not like the elite levels of rugby. But that's what's beautiful about adaptive sports is that you don't need to be elite to be able to change a life. And I think that's great with everything too. Like you don't need to be elite at anything to change someone's life through kindness and through love and through support. And so with that, I just saw people that were independent. I saw people that came by themselves and transferred into normal looking cars. It wasn't just the big giant ramp vans that just scream disability. It was just, hey, we're coming in, Subaru, we're coming in, whatever. And I realized, number one, I got to be an athlete. Number two, I found a group of people that I could find support with. So I didn't have to go to some stupid support group and sit around in a circle. It was wheelchair rugby was smashing into each other, but also a big giant support group on wheels.
Yeah, I love it. So from there, obviously you took fitness and health into another level. When did you actually competitively start competing after that from 2006?
In my eyes, I started competitively competing right away, but now it's like going up through the ranks. But what started that was, like you said, this journey with setting goals again. You know what do I need to do to be a better athlete? I need to lose weight. I can't push around 285 pounds and be fast in a wheelchair. And so it started.
What are you weighing right now, roughly?
Right around 205 pounds.
Well, that's a big,
it's a huge difference. Yeah. And it took a lot of discipline because I didn't have my biggest caloric burners working. My legs don't work. So like, it's hard to lose weight in a wheelchair without your legs. Right. And so
your diet is massive.
The diet was really like eating extremely clean, and about 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day for 3 to 4 years to lose that weight in a healthy,
which is not a big that's a very low caloric intake considering
very low.
How big and strong you were before. Your intake before must have been 5,000-6,000. So
right,
that's
exactly.
a huge difference.
Yeah, it was a complete lifestyle change, and realizing if I want to be healthy, if I want to be competitive, if I want to be elite, like nutrition is going to be a huge part of it. Yeah. And then it just helped me set up these goals where it helped me set up a foundation going like, I had this big lofty goal. I remember watching the Beijing Paralympics over in China in 2008, and these guys were flying around, and I'm like, I want to do that. I had just gotten done trying to walk again. I had still like kept the dream of walking again up, where I'd like have people help me I had leg braces that basically locked my knees out with a walker, tried to walk, but like nothing really came back physically. And I tried my best at it, and it didn't work, but then realized, number one, I want to marry this girl, and I want to be independent. I don't want her to be my nurse. I want her to be my wife. And then number two, I want to keep moving on with life. I can't let this hold me back because life's too damn short. Yeah. Like I need to continue on. And so if I'm going to be in a wheelchair, then I'm going to do this wheelchair life as best as I can. And so that kind of helped me pivot to setting my next goal. And then, with goal setting, like, there's all these little different goals that you help to build that momentum, to keep that snowball moving in the right direction.
Yeah. I call it the domino effect. Yeah. I mean, there's so much studies on that. So your first actual Olympic Games was when?
First actual Olympic Games.
So actually, let's play back. When did you make the national? When did you make the national team? I think that's a big step.
Yeah, I made the national team in December of 2008. So like it was
2 years later.
Yeah.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah, it was pretty fast. And I didn't go through any development teams or anything like that. Ended up, and I think this is important too, because when you have a goal and you have a desire to achieve that goal, is going after it. And so a couple of things that we did to go after it. Number one, I'm like, who's a national team coach and how do I get in front of him to make a decision? So like I said, okay, James Gumbert, he lives in Texas. Oh, they're having a summer blast rugby thing. I'm flying down there so I can be in front of him. And so that got me the opportunity to get to a tryout, and I was able to be selected to that. And so obviously hard work and stuff like that, but also taking risks. Like I'm going to go to Texas and I'm going to get in front of him. And if I fail, I fail, but at least I'm putting myself out there. Number two, another big risk is these guys asked me to go down to Phoenix to train. It was 2 other Paralympians. One was Scott Hogstead, who was a 3-time Paralympian. One was Nick Springer. He's the guy I told you about that just passed away at 35. But he just said, hey, Joe, come down and train with us. And we're going to bring in a Japanese Paralympian as well. And I'm like, what, to hold your guys' water bottles? Like, what the hell do you want me to do? Like, and they're like, hey, we see a lot of potential in you. And so I told April, and I'm like, what do you think about moving to Phoenix? We had just bought a house in Minneapolis. And so we put it on the market and moved to Phoenix. And so like, not a lot of people, like, I heard this recently. We could think of ourselves all as ships. And a lot of us are in the harbor because it's the safest place for a ship to be, but we're not built to be in the harbor. And so no one, like a lot of people never leave their comfort zone because they're 100%. Too scared of failure.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're ships, baby. Let's set sail. And if we crash, we crash. Let's, like, it's one of those things. And so like, we moved across country, didn't really know anyone in Phoenix except for like my wife's like college friend in a big giant city, and ended up changing the course and making the Paralympics in 2012.
I love it. Let's talk about your journey. So you're training now. This is 2012. So you're going on now 8-9 years till today, give or take, that you're now on your 90-day countdown to Tokyo. And you just found out, like you said prior when we started today, you found out you're going to captain the team, which is a massive accomplishment and a big part of your journey. And we talked about this, man. And there's so many different layers of you, man. Like I'm looking, when I first saw you, I'm like, okay, this is a Netflix special. This is a couple of books. There's so many people need to hear your story. And there's so many people not only going to be inspired, but it's also just going to give people that drive, that edge to exactly what you said. Set sail, just go. Doesn't matter if you're Paralympic or you're in a wheelchair or you're not. Just in general, in daily life, people need to be able to sail and then get out of the safe zone, that comfort zone, because they say this all the time. Joe, is how many people on their deathbed have so many regrets of things they never accomplished or did. Yeah. And I think, be honest, I would say probably 70-80% of people are like that.
Yeah.
And being able to send that message out, and maybe even in a group of 21 or even a group of 50, one person set sail, you've made a huge impact. Yeah. And as long as we have that mindset, and I think you have that message where you should and will be able to pass that on through different avenues. There's so many different avenues I see you going through with this, with yourself going forward. So now you're in Arizona full time?
Yeah. So in 2009, we moved there full time, moved back to Wisconsin a couple years ago. But anyways, yeah.
So you're now back in Wisconsin. So yeah, where? So your mom's still with you?
Yep.
How big of an impact is she in your life still, and how supportive is she?
Yeah, she is amazing to the point where, like, she had me and my older sisters, and my dad was not making good choices and in and out of prison. And so she ended up taking us 3 kids and moving. And she lived in a women's shelter for a while because she had no money. And but the one thing she instilled in us that I just absolutely loved, because it was, for her, it was the most important thing, no matter if we had enough money or enough things or enough materials. Like, for her faith was really, really important. And I think her discipline to that is really important. A lot of people aren't disciplined enough or aren't faithful enough to what they're called to do because of the impact meter. They see like, oh, I'm not making enough impact, so I'm just going to quit it. When really, like, if they just keep 5 more steps, and then all of a sudden they hit the mega lottery, right, or whatever it is for what they're trying to be impactful for. And so for us, she just instilled this whole.
Do you? Sorry for cutting you off. You can finish that. Do you feel people quit too early?
Yes, 1,000%. Yes.
Yeah, I was funny. Funny you said that, because I was having this conversation this morning with somebody as well. Like, most people never achieve greatness because they quit too early.
Yeah.
And I love you said that. Sorry about that. Continue that. I just wanted to
show that. No. So my mom, obviously from a parent's perspective, and I never really understood it until I was a parent, but her being uncomfortable with taking care of a 19-year-old son, and being real, man, like, I have to go back home, which is not any 19-year-old kid's dream. Yeah. And it's really not any parent's dream either. Like, no, like at that point, and she was willing to be uncomfortable to, like, have to cath me, have to bathe me. I remember
but you know what's funny? You're saying that everything you're saying, those sacrifices she made, when she was doing them, it wasn't a question. It was a parent. Yeah. It was her duty. And you would do the same for your kid. Because when I would spend 3 months just to get him to hop on one foot, or I spend almost 8 weeks before I was able to push his finger through plasticine, it wasn't a question of me doing that. When I was by his bedside, 12 hours a day just sitting there looking at an incubator. It wasn't me being like, I have to do this. It was you don't question, you just do it as a parent. And a true parent just does what has to be done for the betterment of their children, not to see their children suffer. And I think what is something that you sit back and be like, right now, you might look at it and be like, oh, she did this for me. It wasn't a question. I guarantee it, your mom never questioned. It was something that she knew she had to do. So that's, I think, makes it so special. And I know that you would do the same for your kids. I think a lot of people, and for those that don't do it for their kids, are the ones that turn around and aren't there for their kids. Man, this is selfish bullshit.
Yeah.
I think as duty as parent, that is our duty to do what needs to be done for our children's benefit and our children's greater purpose, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the best thing humanly to see, for the most part, when you're a good parent and you show them unconditional love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's because it's such a different, if we're being real, it's such a different love to love your children than it is to love your spouse.
Yeah.
Like, let's just be real, right?
Yeah.
It's very like, I wish that I wish I could say without question, I have unconditional love for my wife. Like, I love her, but a lot of times, like, it's a give and take, and it's hard. And but every day I wake up and I look at my kids and I'm like, oh man, like, wow.
Unconditional.
You know? Yeah.
I was having this conversation with somebody, God, not too long ago too. And we were having the exact same conversation about unconditional love for kids. And he says, exactly what he said. He goes, I love my wife, but let's be honest. If I was put in a situation, he goes, I don't want to say this in your podcast, but if I was put in a situation where I had a gun and I'm a children and my wife, you already know who's being shot. And he said that, and I was just like, you just said this line.
Oh my God.
But I'm saying in general, is that unconditional love, right? Your kids are, it's your blood, right? No matter what, you're going to do everything you can to give them the best opportunity possible. Yeah. Where do you see your future? And let me dive back into one more thing.
Okay. Yeah.
With technology and with everything that just science in general, we're advancing at such a rapid pace. Would you look at alternative ways to possibly ever look at walking in, or that's something you've packed away and you're focused on where you are now in your career?
Yeah. Like, if someone was like, hey, we can help you out and you can walk again, great. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be like, oh, I never want to, like that's, but I think the most hard thing that people in my situation have to deal with is not the wheelchair. It's more of like the internal thing. For me, a lot of people in the community have to have bowel programs where they have to have suppositories, and they're on a schedule, and it takes them like an hour and a half to poop. For me, I had a great mentor that's like, dude, with great hydration and nutrition, you're going to be able to do it on your own, which I do, I'm very thankful for. But then the catheter thing with having to stick that bad boy in 5 to 6 times a day to pee, like that kind of sucks at times. Right. And then the whole thing with, do I have enough catheters? Did I pack enough? Did I and then fighting with insurance to be able to get the right kind. And the whole like money thing and the business behind that is just insane. But yes, like that's probably the bigger thing. The temperature thing, I don't sweat. So there's not like, I can't regulate my hot or cold like a normal person would because of the central nervous system not being there. And so
how do you regulate that?
So, and when we're playing sports, we have like basically what looks like a little garden sprayer and spray ourselves down with cold water to kind of bring our body temperature down. And so, or it's, if I'm out in the sun, I'm out in the sun for however many times before I have to start spraying or get back inside to a cool room. And I just like, it's not that big a deal, but at the same time, it's those little things that
you have to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's go back to that question. Your future, where do you see it? Where do you see yourself impacting the most?
Yeah. So before you had asked me like how long it took to get over the accident, I said 2 years. And it wasn't until 3 years ago that I started pursuing what I feel like is my purpose. and that's speaking full time, and that's sharing my story. And not in hopes to be someone's inspirational porn. Like, I don't want to be someone's inspirational porn where I get up on stage, I roll on, they're like, wow, that dude's in a wheelchair. His life must suck. I feel better about myself now. Like that's, the definition of inspirational porn. But I'm hoping that when I talk to people, when I share my story, when I write my book, when people get to hear about Joe, they're able to look in the mirror and go, you know what, this guy's all about the choices he made in failure. And I can do that too. It's relatable to everyone because everyone fails and everyone has their wheelchair moment, quote unquote, that valley that they get in, whether it's disease, whether it's disability, whether it's depression, whether it's disappointment, whatever it is, people go through it. And we are so good in this society about playing the blame game, about pointing the finger. Like I could say, Kyle, it's Kyle's fault, because that's the truth. I wasn't driving the boat. It's Kyle's fault. But at some point I had to say, you know what? I can't just sit here and be resentful towards Kyle. I can choose to find an opportunity within my obstacle, within my circumstances of something that I didn't control. And for me, that was the wheelchair, man. Like that opportunity was right there, right in front of me this entire time, where if I jump in that, I end up getting this. If I jump in that, I end up getting these kids. If I jump in that, I end up going back to school and get my degree and my master's degree, and then starting to play a sport. And like, it all starts with that choice of saying, yes, life's worth living. Yes, I'm going to get back up. Yes, I'm going to jump in this chair and hopefully get to impact the world.
I love that. How did you say that again at the beginning? Choices you make.
Yeah. So like, it's all about the choices you make when you fail, or the choices you make in the valley. It's not the obstacle or the circumstance that gets to define you, but your choice does. Because I think that's where character is built. That's where you see someone's character. Yeah.
After why. But I'm going to ask you one question. If something were to, and I always end off with this, if something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered or thought of by your loved ones and your closest friends?
Whew. Deep. Oh man. I want to spread. I hope people remember me for being kind and for loving people. And I guess, and I keep saying this, but I'm a man of faith. And I think a lot of times people of faith get it wrong because they're really quick to judge. And I don't want to judge anyone. I don't want to be in the business of like, this person's wrong and this person's wrong and this person's wrong and this person's wrong. It's all about like, can I be kind to someone today? And can I love someone today? Because I think those people in my life that have been kind to me and that have loved me through some hard times are the most impactful people that I've met, where they're like, you know what? Yeah, you're worthy. Because I think a lot of times, especially for my situation where I'm a dude in a wheelchair, I'm 36 years old. I'm in really good shape, but I sit in a wheelchair so people can see me and have all these preconceived notions already. A lot of times someone opens the door without me even asking. So in my eyes, I've been in spots where I feel less than, where I feel unworthy, where I feel like I'm not valuable to society, where I feel like, I'm a marginalized man with a disability. But I've realized, especially in the last couple of years, that I have value, I have worth. I'm not less than. In some instances, hey baby, I'm more than. And that, where I find that the most is inside my own four walls. I have a wife who loves me, and I have kids that need me to be their dad, that need me to show them love and show that I am present in their life, that I'm building them up. And so like those four walls and those relationships inside those four walls make me realize that I am more than, I am worthy, I am valuable, and I'm loved.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Where could our audience get a hold of you?
Yeah, check me out on Instagram at JDelagrave14. Over on my website at joedelagrave.com. I'm over on Twitter for all you angry people that are on Twitter screaming and shouting over there. Joe Delagrave.
I can't stand Twitter. I'm on there too.
I know, man. I know. Every once in a while, I'll retweet some things, and I go over there. I'm like, you guys are so angry over here. It's like angry people and coaches, like football coaches, right? They love their Twitter. All
coaches. I'm in the baseball world. All coaches love Twitter.
They love Twitter. I don't get it, but yeah, like that's Yeah. So you can check me out there.
I love it. I love it. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you're doing. And I'm excited to see the 90-day countdown and see you guys take gold home. And that's going to be a big accomplishment and a big little feather in your journey of everything you're doing. So, man, let's get gold, man. Remember, no second place.
I appreciate it, man. That's 2 Canadians that I have on my team just today. 2 Canadians.
That's all. Where's the other? Where's the other Canadian from?
His name's Robin, but he actually lives in Bali, but he's Canadian.
Okay. So
yeah.
I love it. Okay. Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.